So, how does a being of immense power, a creature literally born of smokeless fire and once worshipped as a god, end up trapped inside a lamp? This is way more than just a fairy tale. It's a cold case, really. A theological demotion that stretches back thousands of years. All right, let's open the case file and see where the evidence takes us.
Okay, look at this. On one side, we have our original subject, the Jinn, a primordial power, a force of nature. Basically the go-to explanation for madness itself. And on the other side, the character we all know today, the genie, a magical servant, a wish granter, and let's be honest, usually a comical sidekick. The change is absolutely staggering. Our job is to figure out exactly how we got from point A to point B.
To really understand the fall, you first have to appreciate the height from which they fell. So let's open the file on the ancient Jinn and get a proper profile on their original power.
Now, the absolute key to understanding the Jinn is their origin. According to the texts, they're not human, they're not angels. They're a third, totally distinct creation fashioned from smokeless fire. This origin story puts them in a completely unique category. They're elemental, they're ancient, and they were supposedly walking the earth long before we were.
And don't think of them as just some monster hiding in the dark. The Jinn were seen as a senior civilization. They had their own societies, incredible physical power, and a reputation for being so volatile that it commanded both respect and, well, a whole lot of fear. They weren't just spirits. In some pre-Islamic cultures, they were straight-up gods.
Their role in the ancient world was just crucial. I mean, think about it. Before germ theory, before modern psychology, the Jinn provided an answer. They were the unseen force behind very real, very tangible problems. They were the spiritual cause for physical suffering.
Which brings us to their rap sheet. Their MO was insidious. We're talking spreading plagues, preying on the vulnerable, what the old texts call tired souls, and acting as these terrifying agents of cosmic justice. You get too arrogant, you act cruelly, and a Jinn might just be the consequence waiting for you.
For centuries, this was the status quo. Humanity lived in this state of fear and reverence for these powerful beings. And then, one man came along and completely changed the rules of the game. Let's get to the pivotal event in this whole case, the Solomon intervention.
And here it is. This is the smoking gun, a divine mandate. This wasn't some magic spell or a clever trick. According to the story, this was divinely granted authority, an official change in the cosmic chain of command. King Solomon was given the power to command the Jinn. Period. The result was a total flip of the power structure. Before Solomon, they were autonomous beings, almost deities. After Solomon, their status was officially downgraded. They became lesser spirits, now subject to a higher power, and, through that power, subject to a human king.
This chart really shows the new cosmic order. You've got God at the top, of course, then angels. But look at that next level down. Humans and Jinn are now placed on a similar moral footing. For the very first time, the Jinn were officially subject to the same rules of judgment and accountability as we are. Their era of unchecked power was over.
Now, a theological shift is one thing, but as investigators, we need concrete proof that this mandate was actually put into action. So, let's look at Exhibit A, the construction of the first temple in Jerusalem.
Solomon's ambition was just legendary. He wasn't just building a temple. He was building a monument to God on a scale nobody had ever even imagined. And to do that, he needed builders whose strength and speed were, frankly, not human. He needed a supernatural workforce. And here's exactly how the operation went down. The mandate gave him the authority. The Jinn, these once feared desert spirits, were conscripted, forced into labor. Their incredible power was harnessed not for chaos, but for construction. And with every single stone they laid for that temple, the new divine hierarchy was being built into physical reality. Because gods don't build temples for men, servants do.
And this reclassification wasn't some minor footnote. It was a profound theological statement, documented and reinforced over and over. The Quran mentions the Jinn 29 times, and each time it helps establish that they, like us, have free will and will be held accountable. The age of the unaccountable nature spirit was officially closed.
So, Solomon's mandate broke their power, it turned them into a resource. But how did that lead from a supernatural construction crew to a character in a kid's movie? Well, let's trace the legacy of this thing.
This timeline shows a really critical evolution. It's not just in their status, but in the method of control. We go from the Jinn being feared to being bound by a unique, one-time divine will under Solomon. But then, fast forward to the stories of the Arabian Nights, and that control becomes, well, democratized. It's not about a king's divine right anymore. It's about magic that, theoretically, anyone could get their hands on.
This collection of stories right here is the key transmitter. 1001 Nights took these complex, formidable Middle Eastern spirits and basically repackaged them for a global audience. This was the vehicle that carried a new, domesticated version of the Jinn out of the desert and into the world's imagination.
And of course, no story was more influential than Aladdin. This is what I call the Aladdin effect. The whole narrative just gets flipped. The Jinn's purpose is no longer about moral justice. It's about wish fulfillment. They get bound to physical objects, their terrifying nature gets sanded down, and the foundation for the modern friendly genie is firmly set in place.
Okay, we follow the evidence from the ancient deserts to the steps of Solomon's temple, and from there to the pages of folklore. I think it's time to deliver the final verdict on this transformation.
The evidence is clear. The idea of a controllable Jinn didn't start with the magic lamp. It started with King Solomon. His divine mandate was the singular theological event that shattered their sacred, untouchable status and redefined them as a powerful but ultimately controllable resource. This really sums up the long-term impact perfectly. Once that theological precedent was set, the idea that Jinn could be controlled, literature and folklore just ran with it, changing the mechanism. And over centuries, the divine mandate was replaced by a magic lamp, and a feared spiritual threat became a fantasy trope. So this case might be about the Jinn, but it really points to a much bigger question. It reveals this deep human need to take the things that scare us the most, chaos, madness, nature itself, and invent stories that put us back in control. So the final question isn't just about how a god becomes a servant, but what other terrifying powers have we managed to tame with nothing more than a good story?